Hi, I thought I'd start this video out by commenting on the tree below and using the points for consideration. Um, just want to make sure that the different uh, areas that I have talked about and are going to talk about kind of is represented in the tree with the different branches and some of the discoveries that I've been on through life uh, have produced certain fruit or from this tree and from my adventures. And they're on the tree itself, it's represented by the little green leaves. However, some of my adventures have not produced much of anything, but in all of them, they have been uh, adventures that have taught me something that I carry with me all the time. And so, in this process of life and in these journeys that I've been on of discovery, they've uh, caused me to get a better perspective of my life and what it's all about. And that's the kind of thing I wanted to share in these videos that I've been doing. Now, if uh, along the way and within these adventures that I'm talking about, I've always recognized that, or not always, but I do now, that God has been with me in all of those adventures, even the good and the bad. And He has allowed me to make my mistakes, and He's allowed me to feel good about my uh, good times, and yet He has been always patient with me in terms of uh, uh, my progress and my learning and so forth. And so anything that I have done on the in this journey, it's not something I've always needed to hide from Him, in terms of Him being patient enough for me to recover from those little adventures I've been on, and recognizing that uh, they were the wrong path to go down, or rabbit hole, I guess you'd call it too. Uh, However, in looking at the tree of life, the other avenue or perspective of these adventures of mine is the view of man and his readiness to pass judgment on my activities. And so I would just I would just say in that case that you probably could find a lot of things I've done over the years that probably would frown on. But in all of them, they were just, for me, a means of trying to approach life from different perspectives in order to come to know who I am and what I'm here for. And so that I just described, I put on the second point of consideration here in terms of how I looked at both the path of man and the path of God. And that is, on the path of God, it allows me to discover for myself what I can and can't do. However, on the path of man, it teaches me what I can and can't do. And so I've always, in my journeys, tried to um, identify with or discover for myself what I could or couldn't do. And that has caused me to be in conflict with a lot of society and religious norms that are uh, meant to guide us in this direction. And so this subject in terms of the path of man, was going to cover the religious side of that before going into the formal schooling and education. And I realized that in covering this subject, that it begins to come up against some of those norms that in some cases um, people might consider it taboo to do, to even broach a subject like this. But if I'm going to be honest with myself, then I have to uh, share that this is my perspective and has nothing to do with um, the beliefs of others and how they see life and so forth. But this is my journey, and I've always from the beginning, and I think I've shared some of that. I've always from the beginning had a real desire to understand what religion was all about and spirituality and all of that. That was important for me to make sure that I think in the past I said wanted to be able to go to heaven instead of hell, but to get there, I got confused, I think, in terms of what man keeps telling me it is I need to do to get there. And so, with that, I tried to identify first what did I learn from those years of attendance in church, in Sunday school, and all of the other religious events that have taken place over my younger years. And I think two of the things I got out of there were the fact that uh, there's a basis of truth in our way of living that can be found there and identified as being true in terms of what our Creator's purpose for us was. And there's also a set of guidelines of morality that is established from understanding or getting, uh, listening to those teachings and what they have given us uh, from the start in terms of how to live our lives and have a sense of uh, fairness and living up to the expectation of our Creator. Well, one of the and probably this is where I'll separate a little bit from the what I is safe to look at, but one of the uh, one of the things that has resurfaced over my 80 something years of being here on this earth is a consistent pointing to uh, uh, the lives of, I don't know if you call them holy men, but men of the path, of the past that have been pointed to in terms of what their experiences have been and what they represented and so forth. And so these 80 years that I've been here, I've heard them from the beginning. And even I got the impression because of my family ties that they were here long before I came here. And what I also find is those same stories are repeated today in terms of pointing to the experiences of men of the past and what they mean and using them as a guide as to what it is uh, that I need to do uh, in order to live according to God's will. So, with that in mind, I want to go into um, something that kind of strays a little bit from that description of our religious teachings and so forth. But before I do, I want to talk a little bit about uh, this environment that I grew up in and how religion religious uh, structures were set up at that time and what we live by. At one point in my life, we lived in a house that was about less than a block away, just around the corner from our house was this religious church that was very convenient. It was right there, and its purpose was to worship uh, God on each Sunday, and was uh, really kept up in terms of its appearance. It was a brick structure painted with white paint and steeples and that kind of thing. And it was set up to worship uh, for a group of people that uh, was not the group I belonged to. And so the church I we went to was about 1 to 2 miles down the road. And at that time, that 1 or 2 miles meant that's how you had to walk in order to get to church. Because at that time, of course, we didn't have cars, and it's on occasion there was the horse and buggy or the wagons that you could hitch a ride on, and it took you a little while, but you still got there. Well, this church I just described, I was doing it because it was a separation from a means of acknowledging the separation or segregation of groups of people in the worship of our Creator. And the fact that I had to go, or we had to go 2 or 3 miles down the street to work down the road to worship um, our Creator, which I thought was the same Creator this church that was right around the block was worshiping, but that separation was there, and it it just never clicked or made any sense to me that I couldn't go to that church. I understood why, but still, from the perspective of our Creator, it just didn't ring of His truth and His purpose in placing us here in the first place. So I thought I'd mention that first before carrying this idea a little bit further in terms of even within our own group, there was separation of classes of people. And just so happened, this 2 miles or so down the road were two churches. And one was right on the side of the highway as you got to the church, and you just pulled off, and the church was there, and you went into it. And this one group um, worshiped there. Well, this group that I was a part of, our church was on the other side of the highway and down an embankment to a level that you could barely see it from the highway. But it was a building that used to be a church that got burned down, and the only thing that was left was the stairways going up to the upper floor that was no longer there. And down below was this room where we held our services. And so that was our place of worship all those years. Well, to me, the funny thing about it is uh, up up going back up this bank and to the right to get to the highway was our cemetery that uh, that was where all of in fact from both churches I just described, that was our cemetery for all of our ancestors and so forth. were buried in there. And what was funny to me, and in fact, what's funny to me as I'm describing this or started thinking about to describe it, was that um, thinking of the idea of our Creator and how in those services that I attended, they talked about heaven and hell and going there after death. That it was ironic that our church was down below the cemetery where they buried our, we buried our folks. And it made me think about maybe that's where we were in the first place, but that's a joke. So just know it was a passing thought about the irony of all of this and how we have divided ourselves into the point of how we even access our Creator. So um, that was something I wanted to share with you that is a part of my background and my travels in these into these different aspects of my life and what they meant to me at the time. Uh, Also, in this teaching that uh, is a part of religion in general, ours in particular, was the fact that it was a focus on the lives of uh, men that were considered holy in the past, some 2,000 years ago or something, and their lives in terms of what they meant for us, uh, meant for us at this time, but was a part of setting up the guidelines that we were to follow from the standpoint of when they lived their lives. And I've always uh, thought about that in terms of uh, them having set the tone for how we live our lives and everything measured against that when we go to talk about our faith and our religion and what we're to believe in and so forth, that they have been set as an example as to what we should follow. And with that in mind, I want to I say here I'm going to stray a little bit off the forbidden path in terms of that thinking, and I realize that it that it may be something that will cause um, different reactions in terms of how I looked at it. But I always asked my question. The question of myself was, well, where are those same individuals in our lives today? In other words, are there any Josephs, Davids, or Marys that are alive today and in our present time that we can look at and point to as guides in terms of how we live our lives uh, today? And if so, how do we uh, identify and get in touch with them and uh, and recognize how we would emulate their lives in terms of what we should do and how we should live and so forth. And thinking about that, I really only recently began to come in contact with people that I would classify on that level that would inspire me in life. That uh, in looking at them, I recognize their commitment to um, uh, their creator and how it's expressed through them. And and when I see it or recognize it, it always gives me this confirmation and this some kind of feeling that I'm in the presence of somebody who's truly experienced what uh, their purpose here on this earth is, and have gotten in touch with something within that allows them to express that in a way that uh, can be seen and recognized by all of us. So, my point in this is I think uh, I, I've tried to identify people of today that have been a part of my life and live in it that I could look up to just as um, the that's what's in the scriptures or spiritual text that is presenting a life in the past that is to be looked up to. So along the way, in my life, I've become this observer of the uh, nature of us, anyone I come in contact with, that gets my that I'm looking for something that gets my attention to say, I really appreciate that I've come in contact with someone who expresses what I think God intended for us to be. And so that has been my approach through life as I went through life, and my journey is getting that confirmation through others that are alive today that can confirm what I think is uh, internal to me is trying to say that's the kind of direction you're looking for, and that's the kind of purpose or person that you can have confidence in that they share what you share. And I say I just recently come into a few people who I could truly identify as those kinds of individuals. And the more I look and the more I continue on my journey, the more I'm finding there's a lot of truly connected, spiritually gifted individuals on this earth that are there for not only confirmation, but are available to help us in our journey through life if we allow them. But that work that has to be done to identify the uh, difference between uh, what God once wanted or had for us versus what man has determined we should be is going to be an ongoing fight and effort to separate those two. But in the end, I think for the good, not only of us individually, but mankind, I think that work needs to be done in terms of getting us back on track. So I wanted to share that story or that part of my early day experiences, even though a lot of that came later in life. It was an understanding that developed over the years in terms of my choice to start looking at today's uh, uh, religious and not religious, but spiritual individuals that represent the same thing as those spiritual individuals from the past represented that we continue to follow. So I hope that uh, is clear, but not in too much contradiction to what others see in terms of their approach to religion and spirituality and that kind of thing. But this is what has made me go down my path. And the reason for my doing that is uh, trying to find today what represents um, God's truth. And so that's been my journey. The next video will focus on the formal schooling and education that that started in this early part of my life, and what what it has provided me in terms of shaping this tree that I represent as me and what I've done with it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.